Welcome to the AEN Stories channel.
Let's dive in, because this story has been a weight in my chest for months, a truth I carried like a barnacle on my hull, stubborn and unseen, clinging to the underside of my life until I finally scraped it off to sail free, charting a course through waters I didn't know I could navigate. It wasn't a loud betrayal, no lipstick smudged on a fishing net, no secret boat rides I wasn't meant to overhear, no arguments that echoed through the salt-worn walls of our seaside cottage, its windows rattling with the wind off the harbour. It was a postcard, a faded card with a sunset over our village harbour, its colours soft like the glow of dusk on water, left carelessly on our kitchen table one Tuesday morning that Marina rushed out for what she called a market run. We'd been married for 9 years, Marina and I, the kind of couple who seemed anchored to our neighbours in this sleepy coastal village, shared nods at the dock as I hauled in my nets, hands brushing at fish fries under string lights, our cosy cottage filled with the scent of salt, the creak of nets drying on the porch, and the hum of my early mornings on the water. I was a fisherman, spending my days on the open sea, my small boat rocking with the tide, the air thick with the cry of gulls and the tang of brine, my hands calloused from years of pulling lines. Marina was a tour guide for the tourists who flocked to our village each summer, her voice weaving stories of shipwrecks and lighthouse keepers, her energy a spark that lit up any boat tour, her laughter carrying across the water like a bell. We had a collie, Sailor, who'd nap by my boots when I mended nets, his soft barks blending with the lap of waves against the shore, his fur warm under my hand as I scratched his ears after a long day. Our life felt like a steady tide, predictable, soothing, with room for the sea's whims, each day a new swell in a rhythm we'd built together. But lately, the currents between us had shifted, her smiles fleeting, saved for phone calls she took on the pier, her laughter drifting through the salt air, bright and melodic, but no longer for me, like a song carried away by the wind, leaving me to listen to its echo. I noticed the postcard because it wasn't ours. Marina and I always collected them from tourists, pinning them to a corkboard in our narrow hallway. Cards from Paris with its glowing Eiffel Tower, Tokyo with its cherry blossoms, places we dreamed of sailing to one day when we could afford a bigger boat, maybe one with a cabin for long voyages. But this one, with its familiar harbour sunset, the lighthouse silhouetted against an orange sky, was new. Its postmark from a night 2 weeks ago, when she'd claimed a solo walk along the beach to clear her head after a long tour season. I'd been home that night, mending a torn net in the dim light of our living room, Sailor curled at my feet, the cottage quiet except for the distant crash of waves and the occasional creak of the porch swing. I picked up the postcard, its edges curling like dried kelp, the paper stiff against my callous fingers, and saw a handwritten note scrawled on the back in bold, looping ink. Marina, you were the highlight of the trip. My name's Samuel. The R hit like a rogue wave, sudden and knocking, a whisper of something wrong that settled in my gut like salt water pooling in a boat's hull, heavy and persistent, threatening to sink the life I thought we shared. I stood in the kitchen, Sailor nudging my leg with his wet nose, his tail wagging obliviously, his brown eyes looking up at me as if nothing had changed, and I studied the postcard, turning it over in my hands, my mind racing with questions I wasn't ready to voice. Was it a tourist's card, left behind after one of her harbour tour? A friend's, slipped to her after a casual coffee? A mix-up from the dockside gift shop, dropped on our table during a chaotic morning? I told myself it was nothing, a stray card from one of her tour groups, maybe forgotten after a story about the village's old whaling days. But doubt crept in, soft and stubborn, like fog rolling off the sea, clouding the clarity of our life, threatening the visibility of the world we'd built together, tide by tide, tour by tour. I left the postcard where it was, planning to ask casually when she got home, to keep my voice steady and light, like a captain calming a nervous crew, to avoid the accusation I could already hear her deflecting with that bright, practiced laugh she used to charm tourists and pacify grumpy dock workers. But the question stuck in my throat when she walked in, her cheeks flushed with a glow I hadn't seen in months, her eyes bright with a spark that felt distant, like it belonged to a marina I no longer knew. A stranger wearing my wife's smile. "Busy market," she said, dropping her wicker basket by the door, kicking off her sandals, and planting a quick kiss on my cheek. Her new sandalwood perfumed sharp and unfamiliar. Not the sea salt one he'd bought her for our 7th anniversary. The one she'd said smelled like our first date. A night of shared fish and chips on the pier. Her laughter mingling with the waves. I nodded, forcing a smile that felt like casting a lion into murky water, but the lingered in my thoughts, a ripple jarring every time I tried to ignore it. Every time I tried to convince myself I was overthinking a faded piece of paper, no bigger than my palm. The next day, I couldn't let it go. The postcard, the perfume, her distracted smile, they swelled in my head. A storm of questions I didn't want to face, like a squall brewing on the horizon, dark and inevitable. While Marina was at a tour group meeting at the harbour, I did something I'd never done before. I searched her bag, my hands trembling as guilt knotted my stomach like a tangled fishing line, its tension threatening to snap. The postcard was gone, its absence louder than its presence, as if it had been reclaimed by someone who knew its significance, someone who wasn't me. But inside a side pocket, I found a folded harbour map, dated for a night shed claimed a solo beach walk, marked with a small, hand-drawn heart at a secluded cove a mile from our village, a place we'd once picnicked under the stars. Her head on my shoulder as we listened to the tide. My heart sank, heavy and salty, like a net full of unwanted catch, the kind he'd throw back to keep my boat light. Who had she been with that night? Why had she lied about being alone, when he'd been home, stitching nets, believing we were still in sync? Was this a one-off, a friendly outing, or the start of something deeper, something that had taken root while I was hauling fish in the dawnlight, thinking we were still a crew? I photographed the map with my phone, my fingers clumsy, my breath shallow, and slipped it back exactly as he'd found it, my pulse loud in my ears, drowning out Sailor's curious bark. He nudged my leg, sensing the shift in my mood, his head tilted as if asking what was wrong. That evening, over a dinner of her grilled fish cooked distractedly, the herbs unevenly sprinkled, the fillets slightly charred, she was glued to her phone, texting with a smile she didn't share with me, her fingers dancing across the screen with a purpose that excluded me entirely, as if I were a deckhand on her boat, not her captain. "Tourist inquiries," she said, her voice too bright, too practiced, as she angled the phone away, her eyes avoiding mine, as if I were a stranger sitting across the table. I didn't push, didn't want to hear the lie I knew was coming, but the doubt grew, a tide rising in our life, dimming the warmth of our cottage, where we'd once shared stories of the sea and planned a future of sailing the coast together. Later, as she slept, her breathing soft and untroubled, her hair spilling across the pillow like it used to, when we'd stay up late, watching the stars from the dock, her stories of shipwrecks weaving with my tales of fishing hauls, her laughter harmonizing with mine. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, a swelling in my mind like a wave that wouldn't break. I didn't confront her, not yet. I needed more than a postcard and a map, more than a gut feeling that was tearing me apart, knot by knot, like a net I couldn't mend. I needed proof I wasn't the paranoid husband she'd accused me of being if I asked the wrong question, her laugh sharp and dismissive, cutting through my resolve like a knife through rope. I thought of our early days, how we'd spend nights on my boat, her guiding tourists while I fished, our laughter blending as I taught her to tie a bowline knot, her fingers clumsy but eager, her eyes bright with a joy that felt like ours, a spark that lit up the air between us like the lighthouse beam on a foggy night. We'd talk about a future where we'd captain a larger vessel, maybe start a fishing charter, where she'd lead eco-tour along the coast, where we'd host harbour festivals in a cottage filled with nets and love. A life we were charting together, tide by tide, tour by tour. I'd thought those moments were the anchor of something unbreakable, a course we'd set with care, but now they felt like driftwood, scattered and lost, a mapped misread, its roots leading nowhere. The doubt was a weight, pressing down, making every step heavier, every breath harder, as if I were rowing against a storm, trying to keep a boat afloat that was already taking on water. Over the next 3 weeks, I became a quiet fisherman, casting lines for a truth I didn't want to reel in. Each discovery a fresh snag in the net of our marriage, like a catch too heavy to haul aboard. I started noticing things I'd overlooked: her tour stretching past 10 p.m., her sandalwood perfume clinging to her clothes, her wardrobe shifting to light dresses and silk scarves she claimed were just for work, but wore only when leaving the cottage. One morning, while she was out for a guide meeting, I checked her phone, left charging on the counter. Its passcode unchanged, our anniversary date, a detail that now felt like a cruel irony, a reminder of vows that seemed to mean nothing to her. I hesitated, my fingers hovering over the screen, guilt warring with a desperate need to know, my heart pounding as if I were crossing a line I couldn't uncross. But I unlocked it, scanning quickly, hating myself with every swipe, feeling like a thief in my own home, trespassing on a life that no longer felt like mine. There were texts to Ryan, labeled as a tourist guide, Shed mentioned vaguely as a new contact for group tour. Someone Shed described as good with history. Last night was magical, he wrote, dated after a late tour Shed returned from, with a smile I didn't recognize, her eyes lit with a joy I hadn't seen in years. Not since we'd stayed up late charting routes on an old map, her fingers tracing the coast as we dreamed of sailing it together. Her reply, "You make me feel alive, Ryan, not just Samuel's wife, not just the tour guide. I'm more than a role with you." Attached was a photo, them at a dimly lit cove, her hand resting on his arm, her smile unguarded, a look I hadn't seen since our early days, when we'd share fish and chips on the pier. Her laughter filling the space between us like a perfect tide. My hands shook as I screenshotted the thread, emailed it to myself, and deleted the evidence from her sent folder, my vision blurring with unshed tears, the kitchen tilting as if the floor had dropped beneath me. Was this emotional? Physical? Both. The intimacy in her words, the way she gave him the parts of herself I thought were ours, cut deeper than any physical betrayal could, a blade slicing through the life I thought we had, leaving me to bleed in silence. I didn't stop there. Her diary, found in her tour bag, tucked under a spare headset for her groups, yielded more. The bag was locked, but I knew the combination: our first tour date. Another painful irony. The diary was a small leather notebook, its pages filled with her neat, flowing handwriting, confessions that read like logs of a voyage I wasn't meant to chart, each word a betrayal I hadn't wanted to believe. Ryan makes me feel seen, not just Samuel's wife, not just the guide telling stories. One entry read, dated after a late tour Shed returned from glowing, her cheeks flushed, her eyes bright with a secret she didn't share. Samuel's so steady, so safe. I need more than safety, more than routine. Safe. I'd been safe because I loved her, because I thought our life fishing the seas, guiding tour, dreaming of a boat of our own was enough, a foundation we'd built together, knot by knot, hull by hull. Another entry, from a week later. Coffee with her last night felt like I could breathe again, like I'm not just playing a part in Samuel's world, keeping his life anchored. Playing a part. I'd spent years balancing our budget, repairing nets in the rain, cheering at her tour, thinking it was partnership, not performance. Another page detailed stolen moments, coffee breaks labeled R, a weekend guide training that matched a night Shed come home late, smelling of sandalwood and something sweeter, like wine or deceit. Ryan's stories make my heart race, she wrote, like him alive again, not just following Samuel's tide. I photographed every page, my hands trembling but methodical, each click of my phone a small act of preservation, a way to anchor myself against the tide of her words, which crashed over me like a storm surge, threatening to drown the life I thought we shared. I locked the diary away, the weight of her confessions settling like seaweed in my heart, heavy and entangled, making it hard to breathe, as if the air in our cottage had turned to salt, no longer breathable. I didn't confront her, not yet. I needed more. Needed to be sure I wasn't imagining the betrayal, that I wasn't the paranoid husband Shed accused me of being if I came at her with questions, her laugh sharp and dismissive, cutting through my resolve like a knife through a frayed line. The thought of her brushing me off, turning my pain into a narrative she could rewrite as a misunderstanding, made my stomach churn, a sickening mix of fear and rage. I remembered our early days, how we'd spend nights on my boat, her guiding tourists while I fished, our laughter blending as I taught her to tie a bowline knot, her fingers clumsy but eager, her eyes bright with a joy that felt like ours, a spark that lit up the air between us like the lighthouse beam on a foggy night. We'd talk about a future, we'd captain a larger vessel, maybe start a fishing charter, where she'd lead eco tour along the coast, where we'd host harbour festivals in a cottage filled with nets and love. A life we were charting together, tide by tide, tour by tour. I'd thought those moments were the anchor of something unbreakable, a course we'd set with care, but now they felt like driftwood, scattered and lost, a mapped misread, its roots leading nowhere. The doubt was a weight, pressing down, making every step heavier, every breath harder, as if I were rowing against a storm, trying to keep a boat afloat that was already taking on water. I started therapy in secret, meeting Dr. Alan Vorse in a small office above a bait shop, its walls lined with faded nautical charts and a single, wilting fern that looked like it was fighting to survive, much like I was. "You're not invisible," Aelana said in our first session, her voice calm but piercing, her glasses slipping down her nose as she leaned forward, her pen tapping softly against her notebook. "You're starting to see yourself, maybe for the first time in years." I unpacked years of feeling like Marina's first mate, always organizing her tour schedules, skipping my own fishing trips to be there for our late-night groups, thinking it was what partners did, what love meant. I'd put off my dream of writing a fishing guide book to save for our cottage, skipped boat shows to cheer at her tour, believing it was building something together. "What has she given back?" Aelana asked, her question a mirror I wasn't ready to face, its reflection showing a man who'd poured himself into a marriage that was no longer reciprocal, a crew with one sailor missing, off course and unbalanced. I didn't have an answer, not then, but it haunted me, echoing in the quiet moments when I stared at our wedding photo on the shelf, Marina's smile frozen under the pier lights, her eyes bright with a promise that now felt like a lie, a knot that wouldn't hold. I'd been so busy keeping her course steady, supporting her tour, that I hadn't noticed mine drifting, like the fern in Eleanor's office, neglected, but still clinging to life. One evening, Marina claimed a harbour tour at the village's main dock, her voice light as she grabbed her bag and kissed my cheek, promising to be back by 9. Her sandalwood perfume trailing behind her like a ghost that no longer belonged in our home. I followed, parking my truck behind a fishmonger's stall, its scent of ice and scales masking my presence, my heart pounding like a drumroll before a squall. Through the mist rolling off the harbour, I saw her with Ryan, no tourists in sight, just them laughing by the moored boats, his hand brushing her hair as they leaned close, their ears screaming an intimacy I couldn't touch. A voyage I hadn't been invited to. They weren't guiding or planning, they were lost in each other. Their smiles a private current I couldn't navigate, like a chart I'd never been shown. I didn't storm in or take photos. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel, my breath fogging the window, and felt the world tilt, as if the dock we'd built together had collapsed, its pilings rotting under the weight of her betrayal. This wasn't a fleeting breeze, it was a parallel course, one shed charted, while I was busy keeping ours steady, hauling nets at dawn, walking sailor, believing we were still a crew, still sailing somewhere together. I drove home, sailor greeting me with a wagging tail, his innocence a stark contrast to the fracture in my world. The betrayal wasn't just the possibility of something physical though, the diary's hints of nights by the cove made my stomach churn. It was the emotional theft, giving Ryan the parts of her I thought were ours, her laughter, her dreams, the way she'd tilt her head when listening, a gesture that used to make me feel seen, now offered to someone else like it never existed. The pain wasn't sharp like a cut, it was dull, a bruise spreading under my skin, making every moment heavier, every memory suspect, like a chart I couldn't trust anymore. I started noticing more, the way she'd check her phone before bed, angling it away even when I was half asleep, the new scarf she wore to tour, a silk one too delicate for windy docks, the way she'd stopped asking about my day. As if my world, my hauls, my repairs, my quiet passion for fishing lure was irrelevant to hers. I went to the village's weekly fish fry, hoping to feel normal, to reclaim a piece of myself in the familiar hum of chatter and the crackle of frying cod. The air smelled of oil and sea, the crowd buzzing with laughter, but my mind wandered to Marina, to the postcard, to Ryan. Clara, the dockside cafe owner who'd booked Marina's tour, was there, serving plates and joking with fishermen. Afterward, I pulled her aside, my voice low, hesitant, as if testing the strength of a new line. "Does Marina seem off to you lately?" I asked, fishing for a clue without revealing my hand. Clara frowned, her eyes narrowing slightly, her fingers tightening on a dish rag. "She's been distracted, maybe. Always with that guide, Ryan." "Why?" Her hesitation, the way she avoided my gaze, told me she knew more than she was saying. Like she was protecting Marina's logbook, a first mate loyal to her captain's story. "Just worried," I muttered, but the interaction stayed with me. Another knot in the growing net, a confirmation that others saw the shift I was living through, even if they wouldn't name it. A few days later, a fishing co-op project brought another clue, unexpected and sharp, like a hook catching my hand during a haul. I was organizing a community workshop to teach kids net mending, a project Marina had suggested, saying it would blend our passions, like a shared tide. While reviewing applications for guest instructors, I found Ryan's name, listed as a guest guide with a note, recommended by Marina. Great synergy. Synergy. The word hit like a breaker crashing over the bow, loud and jarring. And when I visited the dock to finalize details, I overheard Ryan talking to a boat captain, his voice low but clear. "Marina and I stayed late after the last tour, best night in ages." His laugh, casual and confident, struck like a gaff, and when I glanced over, I saw the postcard on a nearby crate, its creased edge unmistakable, its glinting in the docklights like a taunt. Clara, noticing my pause, asked if I was okay, her eyes kind but curious. I nodded, but the moment confirmed what he'd feared. Ryan wasn't just a colleague, he was the R in Marina's life, the man she'd chosen over me. I finished the workshop plans, but each step felt like a farewell, a final cast for a sea that no longer felt like ours. I didn't scream or break things. I planned, methodically, over 12 days, each step a quiet rebellion against the life I was losing, like a captain charting a new course through uncharted waters. I opened a new bank account, redirecting my earnings to untangle our finances, a process that felt like cutting a net we'd woven together, strand by strand, knot by knot. I rented a storage unit in a gravel lot outside the village, moving boxes at night while Marina slept, her soft snores a cruel contrast to my unraveling heart, each box a small farewell to the life I'd thought we'd share. I scanned documents, our lease, tax records, our marriage certificate. Its ink faded, but still binding, saving them to a secure drive, a digital log of a life I was leaving behind. I packed slowly, clothes folded with care, fishing gear he'd collected since my teens, sailor's toys, and his favorite blanket. Each item a piece of me was reclaiming from the wreckage. The photo from our wedding, where Marina laughed on the dock, her dress catching the breeze, went into storage, not because I couldn't bear to look at it, but because I didn't want her to have it, to hold on to a piece of me she'd discarded so easily. I wanted her to feel my absence, not my anger, to wake up to a cottage that no longer held my wake, a space as empty as it felt 4 months, a harbour stripped of its moorings. The night I left, Marina was at another tour, her voice bright as she called out a goodbye, promising to be back by 9, her sandalwood perfume trailing behind her like a ghost that no longer belonged in our home. I worked quickly, stripping the cottage of me. No boots by the door, no jacket on the rack, no mug in the sink, no trace of my daily routines, mending nets by the window, charting hauls in the evening, scratching sailor's ears while he napped on his blanket. I unplugged my charger, packed my logbook, even took the worn tide chart I'd been studying. its pages marked with notes about currents and dreams of longer voyages. The walls, once lined with our photos us as a fish fry, laughing over a tangled net, kissing under the lighthouse were bare, only nail holes remaining, like scars of a life erased, a course no longer charted. I left one thing, a handwritten note on the kitchen table, written on my fishing log paper, my words steady but heavy, penned in the quiet of 2 a.m. The night before. Marina, I know about Ryan. The postcard, the texts, your diary. I'm done being your anchor. The steady one you don't see. I'm gone. Goodbye. I took Sailor, his leash jingling softly as he trotted beside me, locked the door, and drove to a motel an hour up the coast, the village lights fading in my rear view, the hum of the highway a lullaby to my fractured heart. I felt no triumph, only a hollow relief, like dropping anchor in a new harbour, the sea stretching dark and open before me, like a blank chart waiting to be mapped. I parked a blocks from the cottage to watch, needing to see her reaction, to know if my absence registered in the carefully curated world shed built without me. At 10:25 p.m., her car pulled into the lot, her silhouette in a silk scarf, the kind shed started wearing for tour, its fabric catching the streetlight's glow. Ryan's motorcycle was parked nearby, a silent confirmation of the life shed chosen over ours. She walked in, carefree, her sandals scuffing the floor, then froze in the doorway, her posture stiffening as if she'd sensed the void before seeing it. I saw her call my name once, twice, 3 times, her voice rising, then breaking into the silence, a sound swallowed by the empty cottage. She flipped on lights, her tall bag hitting the floor with a thud as she noticed the empty walls, the missing jacket, my side of the closet bare. She opened the fridge, found my labelled leftovers gone, the smoked fish on it, the sandwiches he'd made for lunch, even Sailor's food bowl missing, his water dish absent from its usual spots by the door. Her hand went to her mouth, but she didn't cry, just stood there, staring, as if waiting for me to walk back in with a laugh, saying it was a prank, that he'd never leave her, that I'd stay her steady anchor forever, the fisherman who'd keep her world moored. I didn't. I drove back to the motel, its flickering neon sign buzzing like a heartbeat, and sat on the stiff bed, Sailor curled beside me, his warmth a small anchor in the storm. I wondered if he'd made the right choice, or just scuttled my life, the question looping in my mind like a current caught in a riptide, unresolved and pulling. By morning, I expected her phone to light up mine, texts, calls, voicemails begging for answers, pleading for me to come back, promising to explain away the postcard, the texts, the lies. Nothing. Just one text at 11:20 p.m. Samuel, where are you? What's this? No panic, no tears, just mild confusion, as if I'd misplaced myself like a lost logbook, an inconvenience to our evening's itinerary. It crushed me, not because she didn't beg, but because she didn't seem shocked, as if she'd always known it'd drift away eventually, that I was temporary, an anchor until someone like Ryan came along, someone who made her feel alive in ways I apparently couldn't, someone who fit the new course she was charting for her life. I didn't reply. I sat in the motel, sipping coffee that tasted like ash, staring at the peeling wallpaper, its faded stripes a mockery of the home we'd built together, a harbour now stripped of its moorings. Had I been the fool all along, believing in a love she'd outgrown years ago? Had I been blind to the signs, the late tour, the new scarves, the way her kisses had become perfunctory, like tying a knot out of habit rather than purpose? I thought of our first year together, how we'd sit on the dock with fish and chips, her laughter filling the air as I taught her to cast a line, her hands slipping but eager. I'd thought those moments were the foundation of something unbreakable, but maybe they were just ripples, fleeting waves swept away to make room for her new chart, one that didn't include me. 3 days passed with no follow-up, not from Marina, not from her brother, Tom, who'd always sent me tide charts and fishing tips, not even from Clara, the cafe owner who'd invited me to fish fries when Marina was too busy. The silence was deafening, a confirmation she'd moved on long before I packed my bags, that I'd been a ghost in my own marriage long before I left, haunting a cottage that no longer needed my wake. I spent those days in a fog, walking sailor along the motel's cracked parking lot, his tail wagging as he chased shadows, his trust in me a small comfort in the haze. I called my sister, Ava, who lived 2 hours away, her voice steady as she listened through my halting explanation, the words spilling out in a rush, like fish pouring from a net in a desperate haul. "You're not crazy, Samuel," she said, her tone firm, like she was anchoring me from miles away. "She chose him over you. You don't owe her your pain. Not after she cast you off. She offered her spare room, a place to crash, but I declined. I needed solitude, not pity. Needed to face this alone before I could lean on anyone else. You're stronger than you think," she added, her voice softening, and I wanted to believe her, but I felt like a broken line, discarded after a catch, useless and frayed. I kept seeing Elena, my therapist, twice a week now, her office a safe harbor, where I could unravel the tangle of my thoughts without judgment, the wilting fern in the corner a quiet reminder of my own struggle to survive. "You're grieving," she said in our second session, her pen tapping softly against her notebook, her eyes kind but unflinching behind her glasses. "Not just her, but the version of you that believed in her. The version that thought love was enough to keep her." I nodded, tears stinging my eyes, and admitted the truth. I'd spent years trying to be enough, molding myself to her needs, organizing her tour schedules, skipping my own fishing trips to be there for her late-night groups, cheering at her performances only to realize I'd been invisible to her long before Ryan entered the picture. "What did you want from her that you didn't get?" Elena asked, her question a mirror I wasn't ready to face, its reflection showing a man who'd given everything and received only absence in return. I sat there, staring at the fern, its leaves curling inward like my own heart, and said, I wanted her to see me, not as the guy who keeps things steady, but as the man she chose, the one she loved. The words felt like a confession, a truth I'd buried under years of routine, under the weight of being the steady one, the reliable one, the one who never asked for more, because I thought love meant sacrifice. Elena leaned forward, her voice steady. "You can't make someone see you, Samuel, but you can choose to see yourself, to value the man you are, not the role you played for her." On the 5th night, I drove back to our neighborhood, parking near the harbor's main dock, its neon sign glowing in the dusk, a place that had once been ours, but now felt like a port for her new voyage. Through the fog, I saw Marina with Ryan, her laugh bright and unburdened, the postcard tucked in her pocket, its edge visible like a secret spilling out. They sat close, his hand grazing her arm, her eyes sparkling in a way they hadn't for me in years, not since we'd stayed up late planning a future that felt possible, a cottage filled with nets and laughter, a life we'd chart together. I didn't feel anger, just a cold clarity. I'd been grieving a marriage shed already celebrated leaving, a truth that settled like frost in my bones, chilling but undeniable. I drove back to the motel, my hands steady on the wheel, and wrote in a journal I'd started, a cheap notebook from a gas station, its pages already curling at the edges. She didn't just betray me, she erased me, and I let her. No more. I'm not her anchor anymore. I'm charting my own course now. The words were a vow, not to her, but to myself, a promise to stop living in her wake, to reclaim the man I'd been before I became her first mate, her safety net, her afterthought. The village's annual harbour festival, held 2 weeks later, became the moment Marina's lies unravelled publicly. I hadn't planned to attend, but Ava, my sister, insisted, driving in from her town with her usual fierce energy, her car packed with coffee, and a determination to pull me out of my fog. "You can't hide forever," she said, handing me a thermos as we parked near the festival grounds, the air thick with the scent of fried fish and the hum of fiddles. The festival was a live crowd swaying to sea shanties, stalls lit with lanterns, kids chasing kites along the shore. I stayed on the edges, sailor at my side, his leash loose in my hand, but I saw Marina across the dock, laughing with Ryan, the postcard in her pocket, its edge catching the light like a beacon. Clara, the cafe owner, was there too, her eyes flicking between Marina and me, her expression tight with unspoken knowledge. During a band set break, Ava took the stage mic, her voice steady but pointed. "The sea's about truth," she said, her gaze landing on Marina. "Some of us have forgotten what that means." The crowd murmured, confused, but Ava's words landed like a breaker, and I saw Marina's smile falter, her eyes darting to me, then away. Later, Ava cornered her by a fish stall, her voice low but sharp, words I couldn't hear, but could feel, like a line cutting through a false knot. Marina's face paled, her hands clutching the postcard, and for the first time, she looked exposed, her carefully curated logbook crumbling under the weight of truth. I didn't stay to watch the fallout. I left with Ava, Sailor trotting beside us, the festival fading behind me, a tide receding with every step. A month later, I ran into Tom, Marina's brother, at a bait shop downtown, his arms full of tackle. "Samuel, you're here," he said, his voice hesitant, his eyes searching mine. "Heard you left." I nodded, clutching a spool of line, my heart racing as I weighed whether to speak. "Just shopping," I said, then added, "Ask Marina about Ryan." The postcard. Tom's eyes widened, his hand pausing on his tackle. "Ryan, the guide guy?" I thought he trailed off, realization dawning. "I'm sorry, Samuel," he whispered, but I shook my head. "Don't be. Just don't let her make me the bad guy." I walked away, feeling lighter, like he'd cast a line that finally held, reclaiming a piece of the truth. 2 weeks later, I got an email from Dr. Elena Vorse, whom he'd sent the diary photos, the texts, and a brief note explaining my absence. "Samuel, I'm sorry," she wrote, her words measured, but heavy with empathy. "You deserved better. Marina's been in touch, but she's deflecting, blaming Tor's stress, her need for freedom. Take care of yourself, and let me know if you need to talk." The email lifted a weight, not because I needed validation, but because it confirmed I wasn't crazy, wasn't overreacting to a postcard and a hunch. It'd been erased, but I was done letting her chart my course. I started running, the motel's nearby beach a quiet refuge, its dunes winding through grasses and shells, the air sharp with salt and freedom. I bought a cheap logbook, writing fishing tales in the evenings, each story a small reclaiming of my passion, a current had abandoned when I got too busy being Marina's anchor. I kept journaling, not about her, but about me, dreams I'd shelved, like writing a fishing guide inspired by the village places I wanted to see, like the fjords of Norway or the reefs of Belize, the man I wanted to become, one who didn't flinch at his own reflection, who didn't measure his worth by someone else's compass. 4 months later, I moved to a small harbour village I'd found by accident, driving aimlessly until the weight on my chest loosened, the road leading me to a place where the air smelled of salt and pine, a place that felt like a fresh tide, ready to be ridden. I rented a weathered shack by the sea, its wooden porch overlooking crashing waves, its windows rattling in the wind. No Wi-Fi, just Sailor, and the sound of the ocean, a rhythm that felt like a heartbeat, steady and alive. The village was quiet, its streets lined with shingled huts and driftwood, its people kind but distant, offering nods as I passed with Sailor on his leash, his tail wagging like a metronome. I took a part-time job teaching net mending at a local co-op, each lesson a small act of creation, a way to rebuild myself. I started writing again, my fishing guide taking shape, each page a brick in a new foundation, a story I was telling for myself, not for her. I ran every morning, the sea's roar clearing my lungs, my mind, the horizon stretching endless before me, like a chart waiting for its route. I journaled at night, not about Marina, but about the man I was becoming, someone who could laugh without checking for approval, who could dream without fear of losing it, who could stand in the quiet of his own company and feel whole. I thought of my father, who taught me to fish as a kid, his hands steady as he guided mine, his voice low. "You don't need someone else to sail your boat, Samuel. The sea's enough if you know how to read it." I hadn't understood then, too young to see the lesson, too busy chasing a life I thought would complete me. But now, in the stillness of the shack, with Sailor's warmth beside me and the scratch of my pen on paper. I was starting to understand. Each sunrise a small confirmation. Each breath a step toward myself. Marina sent one letter, left in the cottage's mailbox, when I made a final trip to collect stray mail. My last tie to the life I'd left behind. No real apology. Just, I didn't mean to hurt you, Samuel. I miss us, but I needed more than steady. I hope you're okay. I read it under a flickering street lamp, the paper trembling in my hands, then left it under the mailbox's rusting lid, its words fading like sea foam on the shore, no longer able to reach me. I drove back to the village, the ocean shimmering under a starlit sky, the road a promise of something new. Last month, I met Sophia at a dockside bar in the next town, a sailor with a warm laugh and a love for sea stories, her hands calloused from ropes like mine. We're not dating, just sharing coffee at a cafe with weathered tables, talking about tides and tales and second chances, but it feels like possibility, a harbour I didn't know I could enter, a current I didn't know I could ride. The postcard didn't break me, it was the spark that burned away a life he'd outgrown, a fire that cleared the ground for something real, something mine. I think of my father again, his words clearer now. The sea's enough if you know how to read it. I see it in the way sailor chases waves on the beach, in the weight of a pen in my hand, in the quiet of a night where I don't check my phone for Marina's name. I'm not healed, not completely some nights. I still wake up reaching for a hand that isn't there, but I'm whole, or getting there. Betrayal didn't shatter me, it taught me I could sail away and still chart my own course, that I could navigate a life from the ashes of one I thought I needed. Thanks for listening to my confession. If you've ever felt erased by someone you loved, share your story below. What historical figure's quiet, bold choice changed everything for them? Maybe a sailor who turned back from fame, or an explorer who chose solitude over glory. Drop your thoughts in the comments. You're watching End Stories, where truth rebuilds what lies destroy.